What do you call two rocks in the middle of the ocean? Well, if you're Japan, you call it the island of Okinotorishima. Emphasis on island. Alright, that one wasn't funny, but let's be honest, the first one wasn't either. The island, and I'm using the term island loosely here, of Okinotorishima is found here in the Philippine Sea and was first discovered in the mid-16th century, possibly by this guy in 1543, and definitely by this guy in 1565, who named the then 5 rocks and surrounding coral reef Parece Vela, meaning looking like a sail, in recognition of how sails, as we all know, look exactly like 5 medium-sized rocks. The Japanese first visited in 1922 and 1925, then claimed it in 1931 and named it Okinotorishima. It means remote bird islands. Because of Okinotorishima's strategic location between Taiwan and Guam, Japan wanted to build a military base on it, but to avoid controversy, they used a clever little technique called lying and said they were going to build a, quote, lighthouse and meteorological observation site. Okinotorishima didn't really become valuable until 1982, when the nations of the UN got together and wrote a convention on the law of the sea, which they could have called something cool like the Treaty of Versailles or something, but they instead decided to name the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. Among other things, that convention laid out the rules of exclusive economic zones, or EEZs, which allow a country to claim all of the water within a radius of 200 nautical miles, or 370.4 kilometers, or 189,385.4 the rocks of their shores as their EEZs. To be clear, they don't have sovereignty over that water, and it isn't part of their country, but they do have a number of rights over it, including rights to exploration and dibs on valuable natural resources. That's why Japan really wants these 2 dumb rocks to be an island. It means they get to claim this entire 154,500 square mile area as their exclusive economic zone, which means they would have exclusive access to its rich fishing grounds, rare metals, and suspected oil reserves. Is Okinotorishima an island or not? And the answer is probably or not. You see, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea specifically distinguishes between islands, which they define as, quote, a naturally formed area of land surrounded by water which is above water at high tide, and rocks which, quote, cannot sustain human habitation or economic life of their own, and, quote, shall have no exclusive economic zone or continental shelf. These rocks can't really sustain human habitation or economic life on their own because, they're rocks, but that hasn't stopped Japan from pouring an obscene amount of money into trying to convince people otherwise. In 1987, they started building steel breakwaters and concrete walls around the rocks to protect them from erosion, and in 1988, they built the Japan Marine Science and Technology Center, which isn't actually on either of the rocks, but it's near them, so good enough, I guess. And finally, even though the UN Convention clearly says that man-made islands don't count, they built an artificial 3rd rock because, as we all know, the only thing better than 2 dumb useless rocks is 3 dumb useless rocks. But, in Japan's defense, they've only spent $600 million on the project so far.